I never intended to investigate the technological sophistication our ancestors possessed before the Great Forgetting, but when you examine enough original documentation and study the architectural remains, you recognize something deeply unsettling. It wasn't a primitive struggle, it was advanced capability. It wasn't gradual development, but inherited systems. The official narrative about our ancestors is demonstrably false. The structures they built, the systems they operated, and the knowledge they commanded were all far beyond what we are permitted to acknowledge today. Imagine waking in a residential building from that era at dawn. These aren't romanticized fantasies, but the actual physical spaces that remain standing today. Look at the apartment structures with their impossible ceiling heights, 12, 14, or even 16 feet. These are far beyond any practical heating consideration for the climate. The windows are so tall they seem designed for occupants of different proportions, or perhaps for something else entirely: light distribution, air circulation, or atmospheric pressure regulation, all engineered with deliberate precision. You rise in a room with crown molding so intricate it would take modern craftsmen months to replicate, featuring geometric patterns that repeat with mathematical precision across thousands of buildings in dozens of cities on multiple continents. How do separate builders in separate cities produce identical ornamental systems without central planning? The official explanation demands you believe in impossible coincidence on a global scale. You step outside into streets that pose their own mysteries. These are not dirt paths or haphazardly placed cobblestones, but precisely graded thoroughfares with drainage systems so sophisticated they still function today, often outperforming modern replacements. Storm drains connect to underground networks extending for miles, supplying entire urban populations with pressurized flow. The streets themselves are too wide for simple cart traffic and too perfectly aligned with cardinal directions to be accidental. In city after city, you find grand boulevards radiating from central points, creating geometric star formations visible only from above. The movement along these streets makes the official story impossible to sustain. Photographs from the late 1800s show organized flow, streetcars running on rails with electrical or cable systems requiring massive infrastructure, and omnibuses on fixed routes implying coordinated scheduling. Who coordinated this? Who possessed the surveying capability and the organizational capacity to implement identical systems across continents? The silence in the historical record is deafening. Beyond the streets, the canal networks reveal even more. This wasn't primitive infrastructure, it was systems engineering. Waterways connected cities and industrial centers with lock systems, water level management, and seasonal flow regulation. The British Canal System, at its peak, had 4,000 miles of navigable waterways, all built in roughly 60 years, and all precisely graded. Single barges carried loads requiring dozens of wagons, moving thousands of tons daily through coordinated schedules and transfer stations. Where did this expertise come from? Why does the historical record show no learning curve, but rather fully formed systems appearing simultaneously? Even the overland trade routes were sophisticated corridors. The Silk Road was a network with established stations, water sources, and rest points positioned at precise intervals. These were organized enterprises moving through established systems. Caravanserais in Persia and Turkey were massive structures capable of housing hundreds of travelers, built to identical specifications as if following architectural standards distributed across empires. How do you synchronize movement across continents, establish currency exchange, and enforce contracts across linguistic boundaries without the communication technology we are told didn't exist? Then there are the airships. Conventional historians stop listening here, but patent applications for dirigibles and lighter-than-air craft exist throughout the mid-1800s. Engineering journals discussed propulsion systems and navigation techniques. Photographs show structures on top of buildings that make sense only as mooring stations or elevated platforms. If even limited airship travel existed, it changes everything about information distribution and rapid movement. It suggests a technological sophistication incompatible with the primitive narrative we've inherited. The buildings themselves reveal functions we've been taught to ignore. Basements extend deeper than necessary, featuring multi-level underground chambers with pressure-resistant walls and connection points for pipes leading to unknown destinations. Main floors show evidence of built-in systems like wall cavities too large for simple utilities and shaft systems extending through multiple stories. Rooftop structures with astronomical alignments suggest observation or measurement purposes. Throughout, the ornamentation isn't just decorative, it follows mathematical progressions and symbolic systems that repeat across the globe. The rhythm of daily work reveals the most troubling anomalies. The factories weren't primitive workshops, they were massive structures with floor-to-ceiling machinery and precision equipment. We see textile mills producing millions of yards of fabric and steel foundries operating at industrial scales decades before the official Industrial Revolution reached maturity. Inside these factories, you find equipment requiring tolerances measurable in thousandths of an inch and hydraulic systems operating at high pressures. Thousands of workers across multiple industries simultaneously possessed specialized knowledge. Where did the training come from? The evidence suggests inherited systems and repurposed infrastructure rather than gradual invention. Daily commerce reveals integrated networks requiring information technology we are told only came with the telegraph. Records show coordinated pricing and synchronized commodity movements across oceanic distances. Market buildings had climate control and refrigeration capabilities. Financial instruments like letters of credit were honored across empires, implying institutional structures and verification mechanisms that shouldn't have existed. What happened to this knowledge? Engineering journals from the 1880s discussed hydraulic systems and energy distribution networks that disappeared by 1920, replaced by different paradigms. It's as if an entire knowledge base was systematically replaced. We find network systems we don't understand and mechanical apparatus we can't identify. Why would efficient systems be replaced with inferior alternatives? The official narrative denies the premise because it claims progress is linear. Imagine living through this transition, watching comprehensive infrastructure be dismantled and replaced by fragmented solutions. Older residents once remembered when systems worked seamlessly, but those voices were marginalized to protect the story of modernity. Today, you can still see the evidence if you know where to look. 19th-century railway stations have acoustic engineering modern architects struggle to achieve. Victorian water systems have pressure regulation contemporary infrastructure can't match. The question isn't whether this world existed. The physical evidence is overwhelming. The question is why we are so determined not to see it. Why does acknowledging these capabilities threaten our modern identity? We must accept that knowledge sometimes is lost and that progress isn't always a straight line. The buildings stand waiting for someone to ask the right questions. The photographs preserve a world we claim never existed, but people lived in it. Once you see the gap between the physical evidence and the approved narrative, you realize that the truth has been hidden in plain sight. Someone decided we shouldn't remember what our ancestors actually possessed before the reset. But the buildings, the streets, and the underground networks remember, even if we've been trained to forget.